In this video, I'm going to run you through how to install and get set up using processing as a replacement for the P5.js web editor. So the first place you're going to want to start is, it's not in QuickTime, in Westminster's self-service app. So in here, you can just search for the app that we're going to be using by name, which is processing. So if you type in processing, you should see a couple of options, but the one we want is the blue logo that's just labeled processing right here, 4.3. Awesome. So you're going to go ahead and install that. It's not a very big download. It shouldn't take terribly long. So I've already downloaded it. So here it is in my applications folder. But once you've downloaded processing, you're just going to open up the app and you'll see that little processing 4 screen, and then you'll see a window like this. Now your window might look slightly differently from mine, and that's probably because it by default will either open in Java mode or in Python mode. The nice thing is we can switch between modes using this option up here in the top right corner. Now when you first download it, you likely don't have P5.js mode as an option. That's okay. We're just going to click on Manage Modes, and then from this list right around the middle you'll see P5.js mode. So if you didn't already have it installed, you're going to go ahead and click Install. And it should just take a few seconds to install P5.js mode. That's the one we're going to be using. When you're finished installing, you can hit the little red X. Make sure you have P5.js mode selected, and you should see a window similar to this. So you'll notice, just like in the P5.js web editor, we've got a function setup and a function draw pre-populated for us. One difference is that it does not automatically include the call to create canvas, which we've got to do on our own. And in draw, typically it would include a call to draw the background. We'll go ahead and do that on our own as well. So right here is where we're going to edit our code. The index.html is a document that you really don't need to modify for AP Comp Sci principles, but that's in there for other purposes, for sort of more advanced stuff. But here's where we can edit our code. When we go to run our code, however, you'll notice there's no canvas next to it like you're used to seeing. We're used to seeing sort of our code over here and our canvas over here. When we hit play, it's going to open your default browser. So for most of you, probably Google Chrome. And you'll see, I told it to create a canvas that was 600 by 600 and was dark gray. This is great. It's just like we're used to seeing our canvas show up. However, we're not actually on the web. This means we're using a local server. Basically, this is running on my computer. The nice thing is that means you can run this program, you can run your sketch, even if you don't have connection to the internet. You can still work on your code here. You can still see it run here. However, one thing that's missing is if I come in here and I say something like print hello world, in the web editor, we would have a console right here below it where we would see print hello world. We would see that printed over and over, but now when I run my sketch, I don't see that in this tab. So if you want to use print statements, what you have to do when you're in Chrome looking at your sketch is click on View, Developer, JavaScript Console, or you can just hit Command Option J. That's going to open up this window. If you see these failed to load resource, net error, you can ignore those, but you'll also see the contents of whatever you told to be printed and how many times in a row that thing has been printed right here. Now, let's go ahead and modify our sketch so that we have a little circle that follows our mouse around. We're also going to print out our mouse X every frame. Okay, so if I run this, I can now see I've got a little circle that follows my mouse around. If I go back to either View, Developer, JavaScript, or I just hit Command Option J, it'll open this console. And now you'll see those numbers are changing with my X value. If I put it over here, they're near 0. As I increase, it'll get near the size of my canvas, 600. Okay, so we can still use print statements just like we did in the console. It just means you have one extra step where you have to go actually open the console. Now, if you notice when you open your console that your canvas is no longer interactive, that just means you need to push this little button, right? If yours looks like this, where it only moves when you click, that means you're in some kind of like touchscreen simulation mode. Just hit Toggle Device Toolbar. It'll take you back to where you can see your print statements in real time and interact with your sketch in real time. It does unfortunately open a new tab every time you hit play, so just have to get in the habit of closing the old ones periodically. So that gets us through to where we can edit our code, we can hit play and interact with our code, and we can use Command Option J to see the console if we need to print something out while we're running our code. That's great. The nice thing is this is still P5.js code. You do not have to change anything about the way that you're actually programming. It's all the same syntax and language and everything. In the web editor, it's really nice where you can hit Command-Shift-T and tidy your code, and it adds semicolons and moves things to the correct level of indentation and so on. In this app, instead, you're going to just hit Command-T, and that will format your code, but it doesn't add semicolons. And so you actually do need to put semicolons at the end of your statements so that it can indent correctly. So just remember to put semicolons at the end of your executable lines. Obviously, if statements, like let's say if mouse x is greater than 10, right? Anything we do in here would still get a semicolon, but this if statement does not, right? We don't put a semicolon after a curly brace ever. But that's just a small thing about formatting your code. Again, you can hit Command-T. Now, the other thing you should do when you get set up with this is be intentional about where you save your files. This program is no longer saving your files to the internet, right? It's not like Google Docs where if you have to use someone else's computer, you can log in and your stuff is still there. This file exists. This file exists only on your computer. So we need to go to File, and for the first time you save a new sketch, you're going to go to Save As. Okay? This is going to allow you to decide where it goes. Now, by default, there's now a processing folder under Documents, and if you gave it a name like My Example Sketch, it would save it there, right? It renames it. If I go into Finder and I go to Documents, Processing, I'll see My Example Sketch has been created there, right, with the code that I wrote during this example. More likely for organizational purposes, in Finder, you're going to want to go to Documents, right-click and make a new folder called something like, comp sci. Inside of there, you can make another folder for Unit 5, for example. And then in processing, when you go to do your save as, you could choose that folder. If you want to organize it by class, that's one way you could do that, right? You could call it My Example Sketch. And so now in my comp sci folder under Unit 5, I have My Example Sketch. Let's talk about, once you've done that once for a particular sketch, maybe we want to change this, you can just hit Command-S to save your work. And it will save it wherever you most recently told it to using Save As. So you'll notice this one reflects that mouse Y change under my comp sci Unit 5 folder. So the first time you save a sketch, use Save As. After that, you can just hit either File, Save, or Command-S. You do have to save your work manually, though. There's no autosave in this program. It's not like the web editor. So you've got to remember periodically, as you're working, just hit Command-S really quick, save your changes. Make sure you know where they're saving to. Right, make sure you know where the file you're working on is actually being saved so that you can submit it later. Okay, so at this point we can make a new sketch, we can edit it, run it, we can see print in the console, we can decide where our sketch is saved, we can save while we're working, we can tidy our code. The last thing we want to be able to do is actually submit our work. And so the easiest way to do that is going to be from Finder. So you can actually, once you're done working, you saved your work and closed processing, you can open up Finder and go to your folder wherever you saved it. So in this case, comp sci Unit 5. Here's my example sketch. I'm going to right click on the folder that's named after it, not on any of these files, but on the My Example Sketch folder, and use this button called Compress. What that's going to do is zip all of the contents of that folder into a single zip file that Schoology will actually accept. So this zip file is what you would submit to Schoology. Not one of these individual files, unless you're instructed to, right? You would, again, right-click on the folder that contains your sketch, compress, and then this zip is the one that you're going to submit. So I hope this helps you get up and running with processing outside of the web editor. And let me know if you have questions.